Hi there, and welcome to Fuzzy on the Details. My name is Fuzzy, and I am thrilled today to be joined by Marty Forbeck. Marty, welcome to the channel for the first time.
Thank you for having me, Fuzzy. It's great to get to talk to you.
So, Marty, you've got a ton of writing credits to your name. You've got Shotguns and Sorcery. You've got, which you're a co-author on. You've got last year's 2025 Minecraft's Roll for Adventure book, which is this cool choose your own adventure style book that's got the Minecraft crafting elements in it, which is super cool,
Hmm.
right up my daughter's alley. But I think that most of the folks watching this will know you from the amazing work you've done on the Marvel Multiverse RPG, not only as the sort of main character profile creator, but also recently for various contributions to the lore sections of the game, like in Avengers expansion.
Hmm.
But today, we're going to be talking about the latest book that you've worked on, which is a standalone adventure for the Marvel Multiverse RPG called Marvel Rivals Timestream Adventure, which you can buy right now if you're listening. You can go to Amazon.com or PenguinRandomHouse.com, or, of course, your friendly neighborhood local gaming store if you want a physical copy. For digital, you can get the PDF at Drive-Thru RPG, and as of a few days ago, as of the time of recording, you can get it at Demiplane as well, which is my preferred way to consume this stuff. So, without further ado, let's get into the details.
All
One of the
right.
really cool things about this book is it's like four different things in one. You've got a co-author, Paul Allor,
Hmm.
and this book has got like it starts with a comic section, you've got the adventure, you've got some lore stuff, you've got different game systems, you've got character profiles. How do you go about like dividing that work up with Paul?
Well, it was a real back and forth process. I mean, initially, our editor came to us initially. That's where the idea for this started with. Our editor, Brian Overton,
All right, great guy.
called us both up. He's like, "We want to do another adventure like the Deadpool role plays the Marvel Universe adventure." And we've got Paul on board here. Paul writes all of the Infinity comics, the promotional comics for the Marvel Rivals game. He's extremely funny. He's a great guy. But he doesn't know too much about RPGs. So we want to bring you in, having been working on this for a few years as a consultant and a co-writer to help walk him through the different bits of putting it together. And from there, he wrote up the outline. Then I added
Mm.
some ideas. Brian added some ideas. Then he started in on the main adventure. We talked back and forth for a while about like, do you want me to handle this section or this section? And he's like, I want to take a shot at doing it straight up a full manuscript, and then we can go back and forth and edits and revisions, right? Which was how we did the original Deadpool
Mm.
adventure back in the day. Cullen Bunn wrote like 90% of it, and then he sent it back over to us, and we made small changes and such. And that was the idea initially with Paul, was that he was going to write up most of it, and then I'd
Mm.
come and spruce it up here and there. But then Paul got sick. He's been having some real health issues
Oh,
for the last few months. It's terrible. He was having issues with asthma, and with right around the time the game shipped, actually, he went to into the hospital for diabetic ketosis.
oh,
He had a huge health upset, nearly died. He's
oh my
okay now,
God.
but he still got a GoFundMe up online that launched right around the time the game came out, and it made its goal. I think he's doing pretty all right now. But if anyone's interested in sending him a couple of bucks,
I will link that for sure. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, he was having trouble with certain sections of it, so I took a slightly heavier hand in parts of it. I wrote up most of the sidebars, most of chapter five. I wrote up the whole lore section in the back, and of course, I designed the characters. But that was all a process of just like, this is what he can get done within this time period. And when it came down to it, it was just like, we got a week left. We just bang it out.
Yeah.
The last few sections back and forth, day to day, talking all the time. It was a crazy experience.
Interesting. So the lore section, the Marvel Rivals lore section was you that wrote that?
Yeah, that bit was
Cool.
entirely me. There are some bits most of the humor in here is Paul's. All of the humor, all of the Galacta narration, that's all Paul because he's got that down like pat. I mean, a lot of the Infinity comics are narrated by Galacta, and he has that
Right.
voice spot on. I mean, but the more mechanical sections, anything where there was a roll on a table or roll to make a check of this level or sidebars for like this is how this character behaves. I and section 5, which has got the big long table.
Mhm.
That's all me. Uh, it was a strange back and forth experience, but
I wonder if
yeah,
I'm right on this. Was the Hell Cow reference you
that was
or
fully Paul. That was
oh my
fully Paul.
gosh, man,
Yes.
I respected the guy already, but wow, that just went up. That's a great deep cut.
Yeah, no, Paul's got a great head for this stuff. I mean, he's brilliant. And originally, I mean, like there was a lot of back and forth in terms of the scope of this. There was an interview with Paul very recently where he was very, very kind to me in terms of me providing guidance for him, and I just feel like I jerked him around the whole time. I mean, like there are so many video calls where it's like, well, we want it to be, constricted in this way, but we also want to provide guidance in this way, and et cetera, et cetera. And is like, well, what if we put these characters in? I'm like, well, I'm not sure we need to do a whole character profile for Millie the model. If it's not going to be, yeah, we only have so many pages to work with. But we figured out a nice balance in the end, I think.
I mean, totally. It's just looking at how many different sections there are and how much value really is crammed into those. I mean, I love the section on the different ways to play the game, which kind of built off of the Marvel Rivals free PDF on marvel.com/RPG, which is this way, I think it was the first time Marvel said, hey, we've got those Marvel Rivals things, which is, separate from the RPG, but if you guys want to play in this world, here's a great Brian Patterson map you can use, and here's these great mechanics you can use. And it sounds like you guys maybe might have used that as a springboard to create these other kind of cool ways to play the game at the table.
Yeah, yeah, and we're always looking to tie in with other big Marvel stuff, just to get more eyes on the game, get more people on board. It helps that our producers, CJ Cervantes, our main producer, and Amir Osman, our assistant producer, and Brian Overton, our editor, they all work basically down the hall from the games department at Marvel. So they go down there, and whenever there's a big video game release or some place where it looks like we can tie things in, like with the Spider-Verse book, they went and they talked to the Insomniac guys, and we got the Insomniac Spider-Man in there. Uh, and for Rivals, the people at NetEase were just fantastic to work
Mm.
with. They actually sent us some of the early design documents for some of the characters that we included at the last
Ooh.
minute. So like I got to see like these are the moves that Elsa Bloodstone and Deadpool are gonna have weeks before those characters actually hit the shelf. So yeah, they were fantastic to
Oh,
work with.
cool. So yeah, so speaking of the NetEase guys and the game, what's your and especially getting that sneak peek to these characters, what's the approach? So when NetEase comes to you and says, "Here's what Elsa can do in the game," how do you translate that into Marvel Multiverse RPG game mechanics?
Roughly and imperfectly. I mean, because we have two very different games here. The Rivals game is fantastic, but it works on an entirely different systems than our game does. It's a hero shooter. It's not a role-playing game. It's all about balancing out numbers and different like swapping abilities and different classes of character, whereas our game is very much more along the lines of how do you describe a character in terms of their traits and tags and what they do day to day and how they act. And there is crossover in how what powers they have, but it's entirely separate power sets. Like the biggest thing in here is there's a lot of characters in Marvel Rivals who are healing support characters. And our game initially didn't have any healing powers in it at all.
Right.
We added some in the, I want to say the X-Men
X-Men.
expansion.
Yeah.
Yes. But initially didn't have any healing powers at all. My father was against them for a while. He figured it's too niche to be applicable to most characters, but eventually we stuck them in. But they're still like very specific in the way that healing often happens in the comics, where it's like it happens between fights. Unless you're Wolverine and you're just healing actively. The healing factor was in the main game, but if you have characters who are healers, it happens between fights. It happens. off screen, it happens at a hospital or something,
Right.
rather than in the middle of battle. So most of the healing powers we had in the X-Men book were still like they are lay on hands. You have to be next to somebody and treating them for a while in order for this to work. Whereas in Rivals, it's like Jeff the Land Shark has a gun that hurts enemies. He has a water gun that he shoots out of his mouth. It hurts enemies and heals allies. It's like, well, we don't have any ranged healing powers, so we invented a whole new trait. Went back and forth for a while to turn limited powers, melee powers into ranged powers. That was probably the biggest thing mechanically that we had to adjust for this book, just in terms of adding something new. But there was also a lot of back and forth in like, how do we translate a character who can swap back and forth between two different forms, which are also two different characters. Like Cloak and Dagger in the Rivals game are essentially different alternate firing modes on a single character. But narratively, they're two separate characters. So do we do them as one sheet? Do we split them up into two sheets? How do we handle super moves? Things like Jeff's giant whirlpool, where he creates like this 30-foot whirlpool that sucks everyone into a pocket dimension and then spits them back out. Do we want to create some new entire power for that? Or are we, is it good enough just to give him an elemental barrage, elemental grab, and let people, tell them to work it out themselves narratively how it looks. So there's a lot of back and forth on every single one of the powers, as there is in the main books. Uh, but with this, it was very much a process of looking at the move sets for every single character in the game, looking at the website and trying to figure out what can we translate easily, what's more problematic, and what do we need to do entirely new stuff for.
Yeah. So
So
if
it was a
there was
long
somebody at
involved.
home, let's say we're 6 months in the future and the next season of Marvel Rivals comes out and there's a whole
Mm.
bunch of new characters to play, and most of these seem to be rank 3 builds.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for someone who's trying to make like a rank 3 build? Like, do you start with an existing, let's say it's a character that's got an existing profile in the game. Do you start with that and then tweak it, or do you recommend just start from scratch?
Well, if you have an existing profile you can work from, I say go for it. Demiplane makes it very easy for you. If you've got a character that you like, but you just want to tweak them a little bit to make them higher or lower. I mean, this isn't related to the Rivals thing in particular, but I know a lot of people, even within our team, have issues with not Deadpool, Daredevil being
I
rank
never
two.
heard about this rank 2 thing. Never heard
Yeah.
about the
Yeah, I'm sure my father's told you half these stories already. He's a adept storyteller. I mean, it's his whole
Hey,
thing. But
I've cataloged how many times the book or the books. I think there's 3 different places in 3 different books where it says, please adjust these characters as you will. It's okay. I mean, the whole concept of Cataclysm of Kang, like if you want to take a Daredevil to rank 6, you sort of have to modify that character and rank him up. And the game tells you, the book tells you how you can and do that and gives you the sort of permission to do that. So yeah, guys, if you're listening, you just heard it from Marty. You've heard it from Matt before. Tweak these profiles as you will to suit your needs. Right? There's so many correct ways to do a build in the game.
yes, please tweak away.
So you mentioned Cloak and Dagger, which I thought was one of the most interesting profiles or pair of profiles that the book comes with. And part of the reason for that is while I don't play Marvel Rivals, I did read some of the Age of Revelation books that
Mm,
Marvel published last year. And Cloak and Dagger, or sorry, Cloak or Dagger, which was the
mm,
name of, which is like a brilliant take on the name because only one of them could be in the sort of real world dimension at a time. And when they swapped out, they literally went to another dimension where their child lived. So, sort of, somebody was sort of at home taking care of the kid, and then they would swap back and forth, just tag teaming. And I thought that was my favorite comic run of Age of Revelation. So, that mechanic really spoke to me. I was curious if you either knew of that comic or had read that comic when you did the profile, or were you purely just looking at Marvel Rivals?
I have read that comic now. It is great. Me and my father, we both try to read pretty much everything that comes out every week for Marvel. We try to stay as up to date as possible so that we know where we're going with the game and where things are going. I believe when we started on this, the Cloak and Dagger, a Cloak or Dagger comic had been announced, but it hadn't actually come out yet.
Okay.
So we didn't have a chance for it to impact anything that was in this. But there's clearly a case of parallel development there, where the
Right.
people who wrote that were looking at Rivals and the weird entanglement thing that was happening there, and thinking, well, we should do something a little bit like that in the comics too. But that's a great run.
Yeah. I wonder. Well, one, did you play test with anyone that played Cloak and Dagger by chance for the adventure?
No, 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 no. Unfortunately, we didn't have
Okay.
a lot of time to do play testing beyond some basic like talking back and forth and doing roles.
Yeah.
Haven't actually, yeah, didn't have a chance to run through the whole thing with a
Right.
big group. I mean, we play tested individual elements, but
Right.
getting this thing out was real down to the line. It was one of our more rushed
Right.
jobs at the end.
I guess I
Though I
was
think
just
it came
wondering,
out well.
like at the table, would it be more fun for one person to play both, or to have two different players at the table, kind of taking turns and swapping in and out?
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
that
it's
was
just
actually that was what it came down to because we were going back and forth on whether or not it should be one profile that essentially has two personalities as an alternate form, or whether it should be two. And we were like, well, there's a good chance that two different people are going to want to play one and the other, right? They're
right.
going to want to tag team it, right? So it should be two different profiles, and that's ultimately why it became what it is.
Yeah,
But it was a long discussion.
cool. Earlier, you had mentioned Galacta, and I thought that was such a fun aspect that Paul brought into the game.
Mm,
And it does remind me very much of the role Deadpool had in the Deadpool role plays the Marvel Universe adventure.
mm.
Uh, so how conscious was that to have? Was it just, hey, Galactus cool and we need to involve her? Or was it, this was such a fun, cool, helpful element to sort of break the fourth wall and talk to narrators in DPRPs, the MU, and you wanted to do something similar? Like, do you have any recollection of like what the genesis of Galacta being
Yeah.
involved was?
Well, I think basically, pretty much it was an idea from Paul at the
Mhm.
beginning. I mean, like Paul loves that voice, he loves that character, and our editor was all for it. So he was just like, "Go right ahead." And also, I mean, the Deadpool adventure, being our only other adventure published in this format, was the first thing we sent Paul to take a look at. So I can't speak for Paul, but I have to imagine he looked at the Deadpool thing and thought about it, and decided on the spot
Yeah.
to add in all the fun narration that's in this.
Yeah. And speaking of this being the second book like that, I'm not going to ask you this question, but I am going to ask the audience if you are a fan of these types of adventures. Let Marvel know. You can either put it in the comments, I'm sure they'll read it, or you can go to marvel.com/RPG and leave them some feedback there. Let them know if you'd like to see more of these adventures. I know I would. There are so many. I would love there to be an adventure for every movie that comes out, like for every TV show. I'd love a Daredevil Born Again season two themed adventure. I want to see another adventure for Spider-Man when that movie comes out later this summer. So if you like that sort of stuff, let Marvel know. They're always listening and they always cater to the fans' desires. So be vocal about what you like.
Yes, please
Uh,
do.
Speaking of things that I like, the team up mechanics
Mm,
that come from Marvel Rivals are so fun for this
mm.
game. Of course, we've got this concept of team maneuvers, but this idea of having just two characters that share these team up mechanics. Like there's so many cool combos in the Marvel universe that you could have. You could have Daredevil and Elektra, Luke Cage and Iron Fist, Rogue and Gambit. I mean, there's a million different sort of combos that you can come up with. And I'm sure fans are going to want to homebrew their own team up mechanics. What advice do you have for those players out there that want to sort of expand on this really cool mechanic?
Just go for it. I mean, like, just do what feels fun, you know? These are really the team mechanics in here are based on the team maneuvers in the core rule book, where it's like everybody spends a certain amount of focus and you'll get some unusual or interesting bonus. And on top of that, they're also trying to model the powers that are in the game. But I mean, you can, it's your game out there. You can make up whatever fun bonus you want. I have to credit Amir Osman, I believe, originally, who for coming up with the idea to stick these in here, because he did a lot of the character development work on the initial free Rivals release.
Mm,
I was actually minimally involved in that. I only we only found out about it when it was nearly finished.
yeah.
Amir Osman is really CJ's our wonderful big ideas, marketing. He's such a brilliant producer, but Amir, as the assistant, is the one who gets down to the nitty-gritty of the game. And on the design side, he really deserves a design credit on everything we've done. But I guess he likes assistant producer instead.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think I remember Amir mentioning that to me sometime last year that he had a role in the team up stuff. But yeah, very cool. Um, let's see. One of the things I really liked about this adventure, and I like about all adventures, is offering different ways to get through obstacles that are presented to the characters. And I've seen a lot of, even fantasy adventure, say YouTube videos, give that advice like, hey, don't risk putting either an important clue or an escape plan in a place where one failed roll is going to just kill all progress. And this book does a really good job of presenting different ways you can do things. Like if you smash the dashboard of the ship, it could take off. Versus like doing something logic related. Just how conscious was that of like putting those sort of tips and tricks in there for the narrator?
I mean, that was very consciously something we were trying to do a lot more of in this, as opposed to the Deadpool adventure. The
Mm,
Deadpool adventure is a much wider, longer. It's got like four or five different huge areas to roam around in. It's got a lot of different like you go to this obstacle and this obstacle. It's more prescriptive in places where
right.
what we were trying to do here was do something that was a little bit more open while also being more beginner friendly, right? This is the adventure, it can feel big at times, but it is really just like a handful of rooms, a handful of characters, a handful of encounters, and a lot of guidance on how to handle each of those things. Right? This is a was developed from the very beginning with the idea that this would be something that, if you were jumping in for the very first time here, if you never played a role-playing game before, if all you
Mhm.
knew about this was that it had rivals on the cover, you could pick it up and, start learning how to play these sorts of games. So yeah, it was a very conscious decision to provide things like the sidebars about the different characters, the more rank X focused, like how do you play this person? How do they act? What's their personality like? Provide a much more character and narrator focused adventure rather than an obstacles focused adventure.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mentioned this in my review, but the rank X guidance, first of
mm,
all, is great. It really makes it easy to play, to get in the headspace of a character like the Collector,
mm,
which I think would be hard for me to approach without some guidance, just some, hey, like this is your, you know, this is your state of mind. This is why you don't just kill the characters with a wave of your hand, which you could. These are like comic books that you want to keep in pristine condition.
mm,
These are collector's items. Literally, that's how he treats them, as collector's items.
mm,
And just keeping that in mind really helped me stay in character. So if if the characters do go off the rails, not that there are hard rails in this adventure, but if they do go off script a little bit, you're comfortable, not just relying on whatever dialogue the game gives you, but kind of going off script yourself and, letting the players, have some fun at the table and not feel like you got to shove them back into line. So yeah, I thought all of that stuff, especially with the rank X characters, was really nicely done.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna have a lot more of that in the Secret Wars book coming out later this year. There's gonna be whole brand new systems for Rank X characters. I don't want to spoil too much, but it is
Yeah.
this was the start of building that. It was part of the start of building it. So
Yeah. And you can see that. I mean, I think Marvel does that a lot. One, they're always asking fans for feedback. So you sort of know what's coming, right? We knew they were going to be getting schooled rules in the X-Men book 6 months before it came out because there was the 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 beta version of the rules, and Marvel was asking for feedback on them. So Marvel has been giving us sort of a sneak peek into the future in a lot of different ways, even with some of the henchmen rules before they were solidified in the book. They appeared, I think, I think when the henchmen in the Deadpool book appeared in that book, those rules hadn't been in a hardcover yet. They were only in the Tony's workshop, and that was like the first sort of official thing. So it's like, yeah, I love the fact that these elements are sort of sprinkled into the game before they are made official.
mm,
Even the different ways to play the game in, I forgot what chapter it was, 6 maybe, with the different modes for the game. Of course, you had something that was sort of free, and now you've got 3 different modes to play the game that are in a book now, not just on a web, supplement. So they're in a book, which means they're, more official. But yeah, Marvel does such a good job of keeping us in the loop on the direction that the game is going.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Rigorous playtesting is really the only reason this game works at all. I mean, we got so much valuable data and ideas just from the original playtest version. I mean, the whole game basically changed from the top to the bottom from the original playtest version. And every time we put out a new Tony's Workshop, we get so many wonderful responses. I just want to say thank you to everyone who has ever played or playtested this game. Genuinely, just thank you.
and I know that Amir reads everything. I mean,
Oh yeah,
he's out there on Reddit, he's out there on Facebook, he's out there on YouTube. He is looking at every little piece of feedback that comes in. I think that's why he was originally hired, was during the play test, just to kind of, be that ear of the community. So yeah, shout out to Amir. I know he's always on the front lines, listening.
he is. He's
Um,
brilliant.
yeah. So just going back to, like, that advice stuff, I'm just curious, like, because I find myself uh, watching more sort of like generic TTRPG game advice videos, because I love the style of play where you just let the players do whatever they want. So I'm just curious if you do listen to any other, say D&D or other types of games, YouTube channels or any other, media, just for general advice, or do you pretty much stick to your own experience and your own guns?
For general advice, well, I'd say I generally stick to my own gun, but I'd also say I listen to a lot of YouTube videos, including yours. But I mean, like, I'm a huge fan of Dimension 20 and all of their advice stuff, the Adventuring Party podcast that they do. I'm a huge fan of the Critical Role stuff. I'm a big actual play guy. And also, I've just had my dad sitting behind me every day since I was 8,
Yeah.
telling me how to do this. So, yeah, I'd say the majority of the advice comes from him,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, I mean, it must be nice just to have that, flesh and blood person you can just, rely on to get
Yeah,
this,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
expert advice.
Yeah, I mean, like in the early days of me going to conventions when I was like 10 or 11 years old, going to Gen Con, I mean, like half the time I'd be walking the floor, the other half of the time I'd be sitting in on panels with my dad and other professionals of his ilk, listening to them talk about like, well, this is how you tell stories in X way, and this is how you tell stories in Y way, and so on and so on. And by the time I got into college, I'd probably memorized most of those lectures.
So as somebody who's got this personal experience and who's just written or co-written an adventure, what advice do you have for the homebrewers out there that are, maybe have played through all of the pre-written adventures and they want to keep playing their own games, but they might feel, well, how do I write an adventure? What advice do you have for those people to just get out there and write something?
I'm skeptical of giving any advice to anyone ever because that would imply that I know what I'm doing. But
I do it all the
I'll tell
time.
you how I do it generally. Is I tend to like adventures that are smaller in scope but wide in possibilities, right? The Deadpool adventure is much wider in scope, but it doesn't have as much advice for narrators and such. It's a very different style. It's not worse. It's just a different way of writing a story. It's a very different kind of adventure. It's two different flavors uh, here. Whereas I prefer adventures that are, there's only a handful of encounters, but there's a lot of stuff that can happen within them. So keep it loose is generally what I'd say. Focus on possibilities and where you need to constrict things just to keep things on the rail. Try to do that as little as possible. But there's always like, especially when you're doing a superhero game, there's some things where if you're not going to do it just a completely open world uh free form, whatever you want to do, which you can and probably should. It'd probably be a lot of fun. But if you're gonna not gonna do if you're gonna do any sort of linear thing at all, it's like, well, I'm a phasing character. Why don't I just phase through every wall and run away? There's a certain amount of prescriptiveness that you need to do when you're telling any story. But I try to provide as much possibilities as possible. I also try to break things down into chunks and if you're doing any kind of writing, I think that's helpful, is just figure out the general outline of what you're going to do and then break it up into smaller pieces that feel more manageable. Because if you're sitting down to write a big, long book and you're just got a blank page in front of you, you're going to feel like, or at least I feel like, well, there's so so much ahead of me here. It gets to be overwhelming. But if you break it down into, well, it's going to be six chapters, and each chapter is going to have X, Y, Z in it. I find that helps.
Yeah, one of the things I like to do is not necessarily think of it as an adventure, but I just think of one cool moment or one cool scene. And I just think about that one thing. And then once I've collected a number of those that are loosely related, then you can kind of connect the dots a little bit. So it's more about, and then the cool thing about that is if you take that approach, the order of it doesn't matter, which is if you're running a game in person, that's the great thing is you haven't written it. It's not in a PDF form. It's not on Demiplane. So you have the flexibility to move things around depending on what your characters do. So I think that, like your loose approach really fits the style of in-person play, or even if you're just on, online with some friends. Uh, and it's very easy to then take a week or two between games and say, well, I had imagined this being the third encounter, but they sort of shortcutted to that today. How can I rearrange the rest of these situations to have a satisfying plot at the end and make it seem like that was the way I had it written all along? That's the magic of it, is nobody
Mm, mm.
knows what you've intended when you're running a game like that. And you can just look back and say like, oh yeah, that was what I planned all along. And your
Yeah,
players will be none the wiser.
yeah. Well, it's what makes this medium different from computer role-playing games or
Yeah.
video games or really any other kind of games. There's a free-form improvisational element to the storytelling and how the game plays out, and that's what makes it unique.
Yeah, and I
I
think
think.
that's what, when you think about writing an adventure with your friends, well, they're co-writers as well. They are hopefully bringing just as much to the story that you can then incorporate. Like if you were making a stew, everyone can bring, a little something different. So they've all contributed something to the meal rather than you being fully responsible to it. So, responsible for it. You know, I'd say for any players listening, don't be bashful about bringing certain elements. And I'm sure most narrators, even if you've got a written adventure, would love for you to like bring in some cool elements, whether it's a unique role-playing element or I want this to be part of my character's backstory or whatever. That only adds to the immersion, I think, for everyone.
Mm.
Speaking of, and this is the last sort of set of questions I've got. Speaking of playing games, what is your gaming situation like at home? I know you do a lot with the family, but do you guys tend to do pre-written adventures, or do you like that sort of, or do you have homebrew adventures, or is it a more of the open world kind of like long-term campaign play where you just kind of make it up as you go along for Marvel or any system?
Yeah. Well, it's a different sort of thing doing this professionally. I mean, we probably role play a lot less than people think, just on account of, we, spend the working day designing this stuff. At the end of the day, we don't want to, spend our free hours going through anything else. But we do. We often go through adventures to play test them. I mean, I've been play testing. I remember one of my earliest role-playing game experiences was playtesting one of my dad's adventures that he wrote for fourth edition
Oh, wow.
D&D some 10, 15 years ago. And when we do adventures, it's either usually for uh, something like that, like we're professionally playtesting
Mm.
something, or it's just us getting around to do some loosey-goosey thing with a few ideas. Like I ran a Shadow Dark one shot for my family just a week ago, just to try out the system because it's great.
Yeah.
And it was really just like I had a mat in front of me and a handful of ideas and a pencil, and we just, um, chewed the cud for an hour and a half or so, as they say.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, listen, that's all the questions I had. Is there anything else you'd like to add or anything fun about the book maybe that we didn't get a chance to cover that you thought readers or watchers would like to know about?
Uh, Nothing in particular I can think of at the moment. I'm blanking on it. We did have I'm hoping I haven't 100% confirmed this yet, but I'm hoping that we will have a few extra characters up on
Ooh.
the website that were cut from the main book there because there was a lot of back and forth in terms of well, how long is the intro comic going to be? How long is the lore section going to be? The different parts of the adventure? How many characters do we want to fit in? When is it coming out? Because we want to get the exact, newest characters as soon as possible
Right.
at the very end. So we ended up cutting a handful of guys. We also accidentally there's one bit in one chart in this game that somebody pointed out to me where it's like, look up Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor. And there was a miscommunication where initially it was supposed to be the core rulebook versions or the playtest versions of those
Mm.
characters, the free online versions. Some degree of miscommunication where we put in look up the rival ones instead, and Thor is not actually a rival's character,
Right.
but we did actually have a Thor. We just cut him, so it's confusing. I'm hoping Thor, if anyone was looking for him in particular, will be up on the website soon. If not, just use the regular Thor from the core rulebook. They're my patch notes. I suppose that's not a fun and exciting announcement. That's a correction of a mistake.
That's cool, and I'm sure you're gonna have a lot of people listening going like, I want my. Just curious, was he a rank 3 version of Thor?
Yes, yes. We tried to make every single character
Yeah.
rank 3 just because that's what we did with the initial Rivals test, with a few exceptions. I think one of the versions of Hulk is rank
Hulk.
4,
Yeah.
but we try to float it around rank 3 just to keep everyone consistent with one another. So yeah, we had rank 3 versions of Thor and Ultron and a couple others that I can't recall right now, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to add those up on the website.
Yeah. I mean, it works. I mean, I remember there was a rank 3 Magneto who's, power set in the original PDF on the website. His power set was very different from the Magneto in the game, so it was fun to be able to play that character at a much reduced level and kind of have him go toe to toe with like a Spider-Man, which
Mm.
probably wouldn't end well if that was a one-on-one battle in the comics.
Yeah, yeah, no. I mean, well, it's part of just trying to keep it consistent with Rivals itself is it's like in there you have characters who are logically of all different ranks, right? I mean, I don't think Daredevil, maybe he could beat Magneto, but he'd be hard pressed. But they all have to play roughly the same in the Rivals game, and it was just for the sake of simplicity, good to keep them all at a consistent rank in here. Yeah, cutting some of them down to a size where it made sense for them to be that way, but also still fit within rank 3 was a trick on some of them. But I think it worked out in the end. Even Thor, it was like, well, the Rivals version of Thor can't, whirl his hammer around
Mm.
to teleport to different places. He can't do just fly through the air freely. You start looking deeper at the characters, and you're like, oh, well, actually, there is a lot that you can cut out of our traditional comic book idea of these guys that just isn't in the video game to fit them into here. And I think it worked out in the end,
Yeah.
although it was still tight on some of these guys. I remember going back and forth on Penny Parker like 4 times just to get the battle suit and the drones that she has just right.
Awesome. Well, hey, that was a great little tidbit. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah,
All right, Marty, I had a blast talking to you. Thank you so much. Love to have you on the channel again for the next thing you're involved with. And yeah,
absolutely.
thanks so
Anytime.
much for taking that time, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man.
Alrighty, take care, everyone. See you soon.